32nd President of the United States, Franklin Delano Roosevelt, of FDR fame, was having some sketches made of him for an upcoming presidential portrait when he said to the painter, "I have a terrific headache," then slumped over dead. As a migraine sufferer, these will also be my last words. I've been thinking about death lately, more specifically, last words. Last words have a morbid poignance to them, the culmination of an individual's life. Every decision they've made, all leading up to that one final moment, that final chance to leave an impact before eternal oblivion. There have been countless last words uttered, fewer that were coherent, less that were recorded, some who aura-farmed, and a handful who chose to embrace the moment by saying something silly. Or at least, something that I find silly. Today I would like to take a look at some historical examples of those last two, in hopes that maybe it can help me with this existential crisis I've been having, and maybe put some words in my back pocket for when my time finally comes. Greek general of the Thebans
Epaminondas
had spent his entire life battling to free his people from Spartan subjugation. He did just that, raising the Theban government into a legitimate political power in Greece. His victories were so great that Roman orator Cicero referred to Epaminondas as the first man of Greece. One fateful day, in 362 BC, Epaminondas was doing what he did best in kicking Spartan ass, when he was struck in his midsection by a large spear. When he fell, his men rallied around him to prevent the Spartans from recovering his body. The Thebans battled the Spartans into retreating, and upon hearing that the enemy was retreating, Epaminondas said, "Then I die happy," before removing the spear and dying on the battlefield. Definitely cool, and dying while your enemies retreat is a bonus, but unfortunately it does require dying happy, which feels unrealistic. Richard Savage was a British poet and satirist in the 1700s who published a number of writings poking fun at the politics of the time. Savage acquired quite a bit of notoriety for his time, but he was also kind of a mess, being described as quarrelsome, and I had to look this word up, impecunious, meaning habitually penniless. He was so impecunious that he eventually found himself in debtor's prison, a jail with typically horrific living conditions where people with legal judgments of outstanding debt are held and forced to work off their debts. Putting people in prison for debt is barbaric, and the practice has been completely abolished. Now we put them in regular prisons for much more civilized reasons, such as willfully unpaid criminal fees. The legendary poet was rotting in a cell until the night of August 1st, 1743, when he began calling to a nearby guard. The guard approached his cell, and Savage said, "I have something to say to you, sir," followed by a long pause. "'Tis gone." Then he died. These are certainly some realistic last words. Not everyone gets a heroic send-off, and sometimes you just forget what you're going to say. Back pocket. Christmas 1954. Up-and-coming rhythm and blues artist Johnny Ace is taking a break between sets, and since he doesn't have Instagram Reels to pass the time, he decides to fidget with his .32 caliber revolver. His bandmates reported that this was a common pastime for him, and he would shoot road signs from their tour bus. He's aiming this gun all over the place, and someone yells at him to be careful with that thing. Johnny responds by saying, "I'll show you that it won't shoot," puts the gun to his head, and blows his brains out. Maybe if I'm super committed to the bit, it could be something, but the lasting impact of something like this paints you as more of an idiot than anything else. Pass for now. Pedro Seca was a prolific playwright and humorist. A humorist is what people call comedians to sound smart. Pedro was born in 1879, but would frequently lie and say it was 1881 due to his love of palindromic numbers. He wrote over 300 works, and as comedians do, they heavily poked fun at the politicians of the time. This was fine, until it wasn't. The Spanish Civil War broke out, and Pedro was court-martialed, and put on trial for his supposed support of the rebellion. During his trial, he maintained his comedic poise by saying, "You could take my hacienda, house, my land, my wealth, even as you are going to do my life. But there is one thing you cannot take from me, the fear that I have." His final words were addressing his firing squad. "I'm starting to believe you are not intending to count me among your friends." Hilarious, bold, killed by a firing squad, that's a bonus here, and now an aspiration. "Do not disturb my circles," shouted Archimedes to the Roman soldier who killed him during the capture of Syracuse. Archimedes was a Greek mathematician, and neither of those are things that I want to be, so it's probably a no, but who knows. Now we've gotten quite far and I haven't mentioned a single Roman emperor, which is impressive because these guys were so damn dramatic. It makes sense with theater being a large part of their culture and a larger part of their culture being the near deification of the emperors. I would be surprised if they weren't more self-absorbed. One of Rome's 5 good emperors, Commissioner of Hadrian's Wall, and I do mean commissioner because it's always pissed me off when people say that X historical figure built Y landmark because they didn't build the damn thing. They said, "I want a building," and their subjects built the building. Anyway, Roman Emperor Hadrian spoke to his soul while he departed, saying, "Oh my poor soul, whither out there going?" Emperor Titus lay dying of fever, and with his last breaths he uttered, "I have made but one mistake." Doesn't elaborate, and fucking dies. What was his one mistake? Literally nobody knows. Vague posting king, emperor. Sensing there may have been historians nearby and wanting sympathy, Joseph II's final words were, "Let my epitaph be, here lies Joseph, who was unsuccessful in all his undertakings, which is a bit dramatic, but is actually a horrific last thought to have about your life, and is one I'm actively hoping to avoid by finally starting to make stuff again. Then to end the segment, we will send it to the first Roman Emperor Augustus. Have I played the part well? Then applaud as I exit. All of these, as previously mentioned, are very dramatic. They are also all bangers, but I don't have the self-confidence to pull them off with sincerity. Another genre is the last words that are abrupt, or stating the obvious. With so many of these requiring at least a little explanation, it's refreshing to see what most of us would probably say if we found ourselves in their situation. No grand speech, no repentance. For example, I am wounded, Henry IV after being stabbed. Short, sweet, and applicable for a wide variety of deaths. It becomes funnier if I don't die from an actual wound. Contender for sure. Oh, Spencer Perceval after being shot. Again, endless application, succinct, bonus points for extra volume, another strong contender. Leonardo da Vinci needs no introduction. He paints, he invents, he steals corpses for experiments, which is weird, but was probably ultimately worth it. Leo said, I have offended God and mankind because my work did not reach the quality it should have. Which is sad. Thankfully, it likely wasn't his actual last words, it was something a biographer wrote to bookend his story with something profound and driven. Now that's a strategy. It eases the burden of needing to be clever if I can just have someone make something up. This could also go horrifically wrong. I wish to do more harm than I could were allegedly the last words of Ranulph Flambert, Norman Bishop of Durham and government minister. While viewed today as a legendary administrator and pioneer of government, he was known in his time as a ruthless aristocrat, famous for heavy taxes. This quote is likely never to have been spoken and is rather made up by the clergymen responsible for his care to paint him as evil but incompetent due to them disliking his taxes. Fuck you and your taxes, Ranulph. History thinks you're evil now. I can't have this happen. I have to keep searching. Greek philosopher Chrysippus, after seeing a donkey eating figs, said, Go and give the ass a drink of wine to wash down the figs, and laughed so hard at his own joke that he died. This is shamefully on brand for me, especially considering that almost every example of dying from laughter is just dying from heart failure brought on by laughter, and I've somehow managed to get the blood pressure of an octogenarian in my 20s. I don't think I need to worry about writing my last words in advance. It's too much pressure to think of something that will perfectly encapsulate my life, and if I did manage to find a good one, I would be equally likely to forget it when the time came. It's the life that's been lived that gives someone's final words meaning, not the other way around. When researching these people, their last words were always the least interesting part of their lives. Their last words are almost never mentioned. Instead, in their place, are expansive details about their accomplishments. Besides that, most accounts of famous last words likely did not even happen. They are highly contested and very often fabricated by loved ones or a biographer who wanted someone to go out on a high note. So the official strategy moving forward is to live a life worth lying about. All that being said, I do want to leave you with some final words. Roald Dahl, the creator of Willy Wonka, lay dying surrounded by his family. He said gently, You know, I'm not frightened. It's just that I will miss you all so much. Then he drifted towards his final sleep. The nurse injected him with morphine to ease his passing, prompting Roald to say his actual last words. Ow, fuck.